Looks like you hit the right buttons.
And we are live.
All righty. Well, with that, I will call the City of Port Orchard's Finance Committee meeting of November 16th to order. And Noah, you've got the agenda up on the screen. So as indicated, the first item is the sales tax revenue report.
Yep. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to zoom in. Sorry for that. Zoom out. All right. So for October, this was kind of interesting. We collected $572,000 of sales tax again, which was $61,000 more than our previous year's month of October. But it was quite a bit less. You're starting to see a slowing, I guess, in the last couple of months as far as compared to the prior year. It's still positive, still double-digit figures, so still great news. And year over year, we're up 20%, and compared to the budget, roughly 31%. Now, I'm going to caveat that with the fact that these tables here do not reflect the budget amendment, which we just adopted last month that went into effect November 1st. So we are reporting October. Next month, the budgeted figures will look different. So the percentages are going to change significantly, but that isn't showing up in this report as this is the original budgeted tax revenues.
When I looked at those sales tax revenues and like you noticed that we still were above last year's actuals and well above budget, what I'm kind of remembering is by this time last year, we were seeing an uptick in our sales tax.
Well, if you look back in this table here for 2020, you can see October was less than September. So I guess depends if you're comparing it to 2019.
I was comparing to 2019.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think, I just personally remember being a little surprised that our sales tax revenue increased with COVID. Mm-hmm. And there were a number of reasons for that. And I think that we didn't really start seeing that until later in the year.
Well, if you look at the numbers for 2020, it falls in line with what we observed in transit. March and April was when we first did the lockdown and things really did slow down pretty dramatically. But then, May, it started to come back with a vengeance and started to see way better than anyone, I think, anticipated with COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it'll be interesting next month when we put up the figures and it is adjusted for the new budget amount. Yeah. It won't seem as fantastic, but that's okay because that was part of our discussion in the amendments and how we funded everything. So let's take a look at Reit. Reit still is coming in strong, although again, we saw a big drop off this month in Reit. $89,000 collected in October of 2021, which was actually quite a bit less than October of 2020 by about $94,000. But overall, we're still up. We've still, at this point, according again to this table, we've achieved our biennial budget. But again, those percentages will change next month as we did adjust for that.
Noah, do you ever look at the Puget Sound Economic Forecast group?
I do.
Because it's been rather interesting what their forecast is for our area for the next couple years is still pretty heavy growth.
Yeah. I think the commentary, and I think I've said this a couple of times, I think the commentary is very interesting from the Puget Sound Regional Council. And then you hear at the national level, the impact of inflation on prices and kind of that what that's going to go with the economy and what the Fed's going to be looking at doing in 2022. Mm-hmm. So, I'm taking, me personally, I'm taking all those kind of commentaries into when I'm looking at Port Orchard. I go, yeah, this group could be right, or this group could be right with if the Fed starts tightening and raising rates in 2022, there could be a slowdown. Inflation is certainly a factor right now, and
Yeah.
everybody's talking about it. So what does happen with inflation, not just to us, but our projects, I guess, as we look forward. I think that's the big concern for us is the impact to all our construction projects, because we've got quite a bit on the table, and we're designing and we're getting ready to go out for bids. What are those bids going to look like?
Yeah, no, that's one side. That's kind of the downside of it. The upside though is that, the economy as a whole around here appears to be doing fine and projected to do okay. I think it's yet to be determined specifically what this new funding will do for, Kitsap County and Port Orchard that Congress and the president just signed.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I don't know if you looked at the newspaper today, but or was it yesterday? I read that they signed the contracts for basically $8 billion worth of work over the next 5 years at Bremerton. So
yeah, I did see that, and I thought, well, that's great. Great for the area, for us. A revitalization effort over there at the Navy shipyard and the Bremerton area, and that's going to have a trickle effect on us. So for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
so all good news on
that. Looks good.
Yeah, everything's still looking positive, still good.
Yep.
So I sent out. Let me go back here. I sent out the monthly budget report last week, so I'm just going to pop down to the fund balances again, because of solid, strong revenue and expenses coming in less than projected. We have nice, solid fund balance levels in every single fund. No real concerns to talk about this time. And we factored in the new revenues and expenses as a part of our biennial budget mid-year process. So we're not realizing that yet, but all healthy balances.
Great.
So moving on, I want to talk about budget amendments. So we just completed our mid-biennial review, and after you do things and you start uploading the files and you start recognizing expenses that have occurred from August through September, I identified a couple things that I want to talk about. The first two, I think I might mention this before. So Fund 109 is our Reit Fund, and according to SAO, we should be reporting that as a capital fund, a 300 series fund.
Oh, okay.
So in our annual report, we did do that because that's what they asked us to do. So we did do that. So I'm just mentioning that in the coming months or meetings, I'm going to be creating that fund and asking council to establish the fund. And then we'll convert 109 all over to a 309 just to be in compliance with the guidance that we're given. There's no real impact other than changing one digit of the fund number from a 1 to a 3. So from a practical sense.
Other than it does take action by the council to do that.
Correct. Yep. And the other fund, very similar SAO guidance said that our current fund 632 is for our wastewater treatment facilities that we treat as fiduciary fund right now. But new guidance has us now treating it as a 400 in the sewer series. So again, going to be creating a new fund 435, and I believe this was actually a reversal of something that the city did before I was here. It was already a 400 series, and then guidance requested us to make it a fiduciary fund, and now they're asking us to change it back. So I don't know, it's a decade and we've flip-flopped, but we're gonna go back. We did report it under the 400 series like they requested. So again, these first two are just to bring the fund structure in compliance with the guidance being provided.
So, Noah, you said the 109 to 309 is to move the REIT into capital. To 632 to 435, what is that doing?
435 is just the next designation number up. It's going to be, we're going to call it the same fund. Essentially, I'm going to go to this cash and balance. So currently 632 is our wastewater treatment facility fee fund, where we receive those revenues and make the payments out. We're going to create the next tier and the sewer. I guess we'll call it the sewer wastewater treatment facility fee. We haven't quite decided what we're going to call it yet, But essentially, it's a renumbering of this fund to be within the 400 series. Everything else is going to be moving with it.
So it isn't something like the other where the 300 series designates a capital. Moving it to 400 doesn't do anything other than just puts it into a different group of numbers.
Correct. Yeah, they just said we should be reporting as a sewer enterprise type fund,
Okay.
and not an independent fiduciary fund. And we said, no, okay, but we did that before, and then we changed it, so we're changing it back.
Okay.
So,
Welcome, John.
yeah, I'll bring some language and some titles and kind of walk this through with the full council, but for all practical purposes, it's just a renumbering of the fund designation.
Okay.
But we did report it correctly in this last annual report.
Okay.
All right, so let me flip back. Where was I at? Oh, on the agenda, yes. All right, so the next two I have, I provided a brief memo. Two things we accomplished in the mid-biennial amendment. We provided expenditure authority to purchase the bank property. We also identified the revenues that we would receipt into the capital fund. But I did not propose transfers to cover the cash flow timing. So what I'm proposing now is in order for us to close on the bank purchase before the end of the year, the city will need to cash fund or cash flow this purchase, as Commerce wants us to request a reimbursement of that portion, the $1.2 million. The PFD, we have it in the agreement that they would provide those funds to escrow, but just sitting here in November, December, I think if it's a priority to close before the end of the year and something goes wrong with the PFD in that transfer, they're still committed to the funds, they're still committed to the project. We have the ILA and we have the other agreement. I just get concerned that I don't want the closing to get tripped up because of the timing of when the PFD meets on their monthly basis and when those transactions would transfer from the county to the escrow account. And then of course we have our local dollars as a part of that purchase. So in my budget amendment proposal, I'm asking the council to approve a transfer of $2,250,000 from the general fund to the capital fund, the 302 fund for the purchase. And once we receive the reimbursed proceeds, we'll make that transfer of $2,250,000 back from the 302 fund to our general fund. So it's truly a cash flow transaction activity. And again, the whole purpose is to help us be able to close on the purchase of the property in December because we're up on that timeline. The second one is the Etta Turner Park project. It's coming in a little bit higher in expenses than we originally budgeted. And so we need an additional, I'm estimating about $25,000, and it's probably a little high to close that project out. Currently, I think we're sitting on about $10,000 of expenses over what we originally estimated. So I'm proposing an additional $25,000 to complete that project. And again, that would be a transfer from our general fund, our rec reserve, which is our restricted funds within the general fund, to the capital project 302.
No, going back, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to go back for a second to that bank purchase. You mentioned that it would be part of the closing statement, the flow of funds from the PFD into escrow.
Correct. Yeah.
Is that closing statement been signed off on? Do you know where that's at? It would be great for us to actually kind of have verification of that closing statement by the PFD before we were to, you know, this authorizing this transfer is great, but just to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, I can, as a part of the kind of the documentation for next week. So as we're planning on bringing these two amendments to next week's council meeting, as part of that documentation, I'll pull the last approved agreement from council that actually stipulates in the ILA that they were going to contribute those monies to escrow. But I just know that the PFD right now, Mike Walton just retired as the executive director. There's a new executive director over there. I'm trying to set up a meeting with him so we can talk through all the relationship. And he might not be aware of this. So again, but we're sitting here right at the end of November.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Just try to ride both trains at the same time.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, ideally PFD will make the money, make the transfer, put it in the escrow, and we would not make that transfer from the general fund. So then we'd only be covering the Department of Commerce funds in the short term.
Perfect.
Okay,
So I was going to pull this up because I know Beck always likes to see this, the ins and outs. So again, here's the budget amendment. Again, you'll see, I kind of like to walk this through because the numbers always don't make sense with the story, but I'm going to start down here in the bottom on the actual expenditure side. So we have 2,275,000 coming in, 2,250,000 for the bank property purchase. $25,000 would be from the rec reserve within the general fund for Ed Turner. So that's the revenue flowing into the capital construction fund. And then once the money's in there, again, we're going to buy the property. So that's the 2,250,000. We already have $300,000 of expenditure appropriation for the full purchase. And so this is just an additional really 25,000. Actually, all right, let me back up. We already have the expenditure authority for the purchase. This $2,250,000 is actually expenditure authority to transfer the money back from the capital fund back to the general fund once we receive the reimbursement. The $25,000 will get spent on Ed Turner. So that's why that bounces. And so you see that revenue, that 2,250,000 coming back into the general fund from 302 once we close on the property and we have been reimbursed by, in this scenario, PFD and Commerce. So that's the revenue going to the general fund as well as both revenue expenses on the capital. And then again, on the expense side, you have the full transfer going out here of the 2,250,000 for the cash flow, the $25,000 for Ed Turner Park. And we are actually reducing our ending fund balance because we're paying for Ed Turner Park out of the rec reserve fund balance. We have a reduction here. And so then we would have new beginning and ending fund balances. But all in all, it's mainly a cash flow except for the additional $25,000 for Ed Turner Park. Any questions on either amendment requests?
no,
Okay.
not for me.
I don't have, I'm not sure when these, so there will be so this will be next week's, hopefully. And then there will be one final budget amendment to come to council in December. And this will be a cleanup title change for our senior planner. Again, we created the senior planner position. Carrie, who is leaving the city, was currently in the long range planner position. We did not want to eliminate that title and that position until after she was gone, and then move that FTE from that long range planner position to the senior planner position. In the perfect world, we would have already done that when we did the mid-year amendment, but we did not want to eliminate her position, then put her in a new position and classification for a week. It just created more challenges on the admin side with payroll and reclassifying her. So we kept her in her current position, let her leave, and then we'll move that FTE to where it should be in the senior planner position that we created. And then I expect HR to bring forward a proposal for a COLA for non-reps. And I don't know if there will be agreements yet with the unions. So I would look for HR's guidance on that. And if they do, then we would obviously put that on December's agenda as well. But I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up. These are two things I'm expecting to come forward with as one final kind of end of year budget amendment.
No, in your planning for your budget for 22, the adjustments, did you factor in any kind of a percentage for COLA?
Yes. Yeah, we did put a COLA buffer in there.
What number, what percentage did you use?
4%.
Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like on the expenditure side, we're pretty safe on the buffer. And again, if things adjust, we always look at them next year anyways to make modifications. So it'll be on the agreements with all the unions. Once we get the real numbers, then we can really take a look at how much either we're over or under in our estimates.
I know the Teamsters over at Transit, we reached a tentative agreement. They put it out to vote and they voted down to 4%. So not sure what the number is going to be coming back at us, but.
Right. Yep. So we do have some cushion in there. And I guess we just wait and see and then evaluate if any adjustments. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So the last item here, actually had Nick plan to talk about it, the water credit code language. But since he said he would be traveling over, might not be able to make it, I thought I would try to cover it. Again, we've talked about the several meetings for several months. And I shared the red line document with you already. The important thing is we're truing up, I guess, the water credit code language with the sewer credit code. So the sewer credit code language we amended a year ago, and we structured that language the way we liked it. So we're now coming back to the water piece, making that consistent with the sewer code, except for due to the 1998 agreement with McCormick, we have a slight deviance in this water code, in particular on page 9 here, where we talk about the McCormick Woods West and how they can apply for credits and improvements based on the 1998 agreement. So those are the two nuances, but essentially it's mirroring the same sewer code language and then giving us the ability now to complete the agreement with McCormick. So we had this slated, planned on coming forward in November. I'm not sure if those timelines have changed, but we're trying to keep it fresh, at least in council's minds, on the agreements and the current code language. So that could come next week or potentially in December.
This language hasn't changed from when we got into this earlier this year. Is that
No,
correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just been a while since we've looked at it. So we said, hey, if we're
Okay.
initially, Nick and I had thought that this would be ready to go by the 23rd. And now I've just been following. I'm not sure if it's going to be ready just to the different parties involved. So we thought we would have it on the agenda, ready for the remind the finance committee what the language looked like again prior to the council adoptions. So I guess we're just going to play it by ear and see if it's ready to go.
Okay.
And if there's no questions on that, that was the last item I had on my agenda.
I'm not quite sure what happened, but I got kicked out and rejoined. So I heard most of everything. Beck, you said that the language in the water credit code was essentially the same that we've saw before. So
Yeah, that was my question. I'm just remembering that when we were talking about fees earlier this year, we had some particular projects that were requesting credits because they had been on the water system before. And we went into a fairly in-depth evaluation of that. And I believe this just reflects those conversations, correct, Noah?
So we did have this particular credit code conversation earlier in the year. And then we had some requests and it wasn't for credit. It had to do with, shoot. John
We
Blank
didn't
here.
call it credit. They were,
they wanted not necessarily credit for a new project. They wanted recognition
mission,
for prior ERUs that they had
Correct.
paid. Right.
correct.
So it's a different conversation, but we did have this conversation as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I guess this document, again, it's red line, gives you a chance to kind of read it over if you have questions, time before it comes before the full council for a request for adoption.
and that will either be the latter part of this month or 1st of December.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, we got through the agenda in fairly short order. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
None here. Thank you,
We
Noah.
got a few minutes before the next meeting.
Yeah. Can I just ask a question though? I know we're being recorded, but when we talked about the tax, the multifamily tax exempt, whatever it is that we did to get the affordable housing in. When we talked about that, did we put any number out there to the maximum number of those projects we would consider? Or, or is it just first come, first serve? And if we feel like we've reached the extent of our capacity to offer that?
Yeah, I think that's a question
Remember a
better for
limit.
Nick, but I don't recall a limit or a cap.
I don't either.
I
Yeah,
don't either, and I'm wondering if we should.
Probably not a bad thing to revisit, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it would probably go zone by zone, right? Because there might be still other areas of the city that have not, triggered redevelopment, that we might leave it open, but shut down other zones that now have jumped into this.
Yeah, because
Right.
the conversation we heard last week was how much real estate tax revenue are we giving up? And, for a period of time. And when you look at them as one-off, you can justify that. But at some point, would that number be, greater than we would want to, forgive? Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, I think it's a complex exercise
Yeah.
that I want Nick to be a part of, because if you
Right.
start really nitpicking the trade-offs of this
Right.
policy goal in a financial manner, you're talking about, one, the property tax, right, that we're giving up, but you're also talking about, well, if you didn't incentivize, would they come construct? And then
Right.
those construction dollars and those jobs come into the area locally, and what kind of impact does that have, maybe over a 4 or 5 year period? So does that change your outlook on the impact of the foregone property tax? So I think it gets really complex really quick.
Mhm.
Absolutely does. And we think about if you come up with an average of sales tax by resident. So if we're bringing in hundreds of new residents over those 12 years,
Right.
what is the sales tax revenue that base is also kicking back to the city? So it is complicated. I like to view it as a stimulus of redevelopment and more affordable housing. And once kind of that supply and demand in those zones kind of come into check, then I think you put a moratorium on it.
Well, I kind of approached it with, it's a stimulus, and oh, by the way, we get some additional affordable housing.
Yep.
But it's stimulus to redevelop. But
Mhm.
and the other factor, which I don't know if you could ever quantify, but what we've seen lately is these multifamily projects changing hands and affecting our REIT dollars. So, you get $6 or $7 million projects that change hands 2 or 3 times. That is noticeable.
And
So-
we also have a
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to be able to fund, our capital facilities plan, right? And so this development is also contributing into those metrics that we were planning out to set these fee schedules, like we just talked about, to basically fund the improvements that our city needs. So it's you have to look at it from many different angles.
Yeah.
Right. And what is the basic goal? Is it to incentivize development, or is it to provide affordable housing? And
Well,
is
I
I
it
think it's both. I think
Yeah.
it's both.
It is both, and I kind of lean more towards the redevelopment of some of our areas within the city. It's an incentive to redevelop, and we're also getting affordable housing as a part of that.
Yeah.
But you're right, it is both.
Anyway,
Good question.
after our action last week, I got thinking about it, and I'm going, God, what if we had 20 of these projects come in? Yeah, I just thought it was worth a conversation that you guys can have in the new year.
We had 20 projects
But
come in
George
like
attitude
this.
to me.
We'd have such an influx of supply that I think it would have a major impact on affordable housing. Rents would go down.
Right.
We'd be able to fill them all.
Okay,
Okay,
Thanks,
Anything else?
everyone. See you in
Thank
about
you.
an hour.
Thank you.
perfect.
adjourned.
Bye-bye.